Hello and welcome to this fifth video in our series of top 85 games for the BBC Micro. In at number 81, it's a biggie, it's Space Invaders. Specifically, in this case, the Space Invaders edition released by Acornsoft in 1982. Now, this version of Space Invaders was released as part of a compilation called Arcade Action, specifically for the BBC Microcomputer Models A and B. Now you'll notice that this compilation, if you pay close attention to the cover art, also included Snake, which we looked at in the last video, although there we saw it in another compilation from Acornsoft called Fun Games. That compilation was released in coordination with BBC, but this one is a standalone Acornsoft Games publication. This was a fairly standard pattern of behavior back in the 80s. Games publishers who had a number of titles under their belt would often release various compilations which would include similar games, and there'd be a certain amount of overlap between them. Anyway, this particular edition of Space Invaders that we're looking at, it was published as part of this compilation. Now, Space Invaders as a game, you probably don't need me to tell you that it is, well, something of a legend in gaming circles. It was originally written in 1978 by Tomohiro Nishikado and was released by Taito Games as an arcade cabinet game. You can see the original cabinet there in the bottom left. And Space Invaders, well, I mean, what more is there to say about it that hasn't been said? I mean, this is a game that really defined the arcade gaming generation. It's one of the first and it's one of the most well recognized. Even the sprites of Space Invaders still crop up in popular culture and music videos even up to the present day. It's instantly recognizable. People who aren't big gamers tend to recognize, oh yeah, that's Space Invaders, even if they've never even played the game. And of course, since its inception, this game has spawned countless clones, adaptations, re-releases across all kinds of different platforms and consoles. And of course, the BBC Micro back in 1982 was no exception. And Acornsoft were keen to capitalize on the popularity of Space Invaders, hence the release of Space Invaders by Acornsoft themselves. They managed not to get in trouble for releasing the game under the same name of Space Invaders, which was interesting because there were a number of different clones which chose to release under different names to avoid any kind of copyright issues. But clearly Acornsoft weren't fussed about that and went ahead and released it, albeit under a compilation title of Arcade Action. So without further ado, let's have a look at this edition of Space Invaders. Okay, so here's our trusty Beeb prompt. Arcade Action from Acornsoft. So, fairly typical set of instructions here. You can see the game came out in 1982, which I possibly forgot to mention earlier. Simple instructions as well. It's Space Invaders at the end of the day, so I think we all know what to expect. Let's start the game. Okay, so we're going to go with one player since it's just me. And well, let's give it a skill level of somewhere, not quite 1, but maybe not 9 either. Let's go with 3 for now. Now look at that. Is that not a thing of beauty? This is a fairly classic edition of Space Invaders. Not too dissimilar from the original, although the sprites of the Space Invaders are all identical on each line, which is obviously a difference from the original game. It's got the flying saucer at the top, which I managed to just nab there. We've got the green bases, which obviously are... Oh dear, lost a life there. Which are shielding us to a certain extent. Now you can see there's some colour clashing going on. As the invaders get closer to the green bases at the bottom, they take on the same shade of green. And if you pay close attention to the missiles, they also turn green and then pink once they hit the same level as me. My machine at the bottom. Wow, okay, we're getting pretty close. Oh dear, no, not quite. No, we've still got another life. Okay, so I don't think we're going to make it, guys. Oh, this is very gross. No, oh dear. Now, I'm not sure that... Oh, well, I've run out of lives anyway. I was going to say if I got another life, I don't think I would have lasted very long given how close they were to the bottom. Okay, let's try that on a slightly simpler setting. We'll go with 1 this time and just see if we can get a little bit further. Okay, this is a little bit more sedate. This is perhaps more my gaming style. So you can even tell from the background music that we're on a slightly more peaceful level at the moment in terms of difficulty. So we might be able to have a bit of bash at clearing at least the first level. Now, Space Invaders penalises you for your accuracy. You'll notice that if I fail to hit, as I did just then, at a Space Invader, I have to wait until the missile reaches the top of the screen before I will get a fresh missile to fire. So, as I say, there is a penalty for your accuracy. Interesting design on the Space Invaders, and I think I was being slightly unfair when I said earlier that they were all the same. Actually, if you notice, the top row has actually got a little extra knobble on the top. The rows below look very skull-like, but those ones at the top have got the extra knobble. Wow, he is going at some speed there. Oh dear, hang on, let's see if we can get him. There we go, nicely done. Oh, not quite. Didn't quite manage to nab that saucer at the end. Ooh. Okay, so well, we made it past the first level, which is more than can be said for playing on difficulty setting 3. Let's see how much further we can get. Apparently the high score to beat is 1500. As with most Beeb games, they tended to come preloaded with both a high score and, in the case of games with a Hall of Fame, you also had some made-up names that would be people that you could supposedly compete against. I think it was designed to simulate the arcade machines because, of course, in a classic arcade, the machine actually did remember the scores until or unless the machine was turned off and reset. So you actually were genuinely playing against other people's high scores in a classic arcade machine. Not quite the same playing on a Beeb at home because unless you had... Ooh, there you go, managed to score a bonus life there. Unless you had the facility to write to disk, then you couldn't typically save your score, and most of the time you'd be playing against yourself anyway rather than a set of the general population who might be going into an arcade. Okay, well, getting to the end of this level, just need to take out this last guy. There we are. Managed to clear level 2 there. Now I will say I'm not overly impressed by that red scrolling text at the bottom there. It seems to be an advert for Acornsoft that just keeps on spooling past. I think it says something like, "Let Acornsoft open the doors of your imagination," and reminds you of the name of the game as well. I'm all for games publishers telling you who they are in the sort of opening splash screens. No problem with that. But I feel like once you're in the game, it's perhaps a little bit overkill, especially given the sort of permanent loop that's going on at the bottom there. Now, I may have mentioned this in previous videos, but you'll notice that the graphical style of this game is very similar to teletext graphics. So, for those of you who aren't familiar with teletext, this was a TV text service that used to exist on terrestrial televisions in the UK, and it provided all sorts of things from news to horoscopes, and weather reports, and actually some games as well. And the style and sort of graphical feel of teletext is very much what we can see here. This very much feels like something that you might have found on your teletext screen. Sort of chunky style, chunky pixelated graphics. You can tell that this game has been written in the sort of teletext mode, given that. Does give a greater range of colour for the Beeb, putting things into the teletext mode, but obviously it has its limitations as well, because the graphics do tend to be this kind of chunky style. I think you'll find that the Snake game that we looked at in the last video was similarly done in teletext style, not to mention meteoroids as well. Okay, well, I have to say, I'm doing a lot better now on this easy mode than I did on the first attempt. Managed to still get 4 lives here, and we've managed to get as far as level 4. And now we've cleared level 4 with 4 lives intact and well past the high score. Although now the invaders are getting much lower, you can see that we are at risk of having a collision fairly early on in the game. So the best thing to do is to try and clear out that first row as quickly as possible. Certainly, although the colour clashing is probably not intentional, it does at least give you an early warning sign. If the invaders are starting to turn green, it means you need to get your act together and start clearing them out of the way. Okay, so we're doing pretty well. We haven't got anything going green just yet, and we're managing to keep them at bay. Of course, the speeding up that happens once you kill too many of them does tend to pose a bit of a difficulty. Let's see if we can see how far we can get here. Well, we're going green now. Hang on. Okay. Oh! Well, that was impressive, wasn't it? Managed to kill him and also get shot at the same time. Okay, level 6. This really is a lot further than I was planning to get in the game. I was just planning to do a simple playthrough, but we seem to be still in on the action here. Oh, that wasn't very clever, was it? Spoke too soon there. Okay, 2 lives to go. Let's see how we get on here. The old Flying Saucer edition at the top is quite an interesting game feature because it's sort of, given the number of points that you get for it, it does rather act as a bit of a distraction because you sort of feel like you want to. Oh my goodness! I've taken my eye off the ball there. Oh dear! Paying too much attention to that flying saucer. Oh dear. Well, yes. Okay, so we're starting from this position again. Oh, I'm not sure I'm going to be able... I say, once the Space Invader goes pink... Once the Space Invader goes pink, you pretty much know it's game over at that point. Now, you notice that little jingle at the end there was exactly the same game over jingle that we had with Snake, which is interesting when you consider that Snake was actually released on a similar arcade compilation. Not the one that we reviewed previously, but it was also released on this Arcade Action compilation as well. So obviously the game developers decided to use that same bit of music across both games. Well, I think we're going to leave it there for Space Invaders, the Acornsoft edition thereof. I hope you've enjoyed this little playthrough. I found that rather enjoyable, as you probably could tell. It's a great game. It's a classic, obviously. Everyone knows that. But this particular edition for the Beeb is a fairly faithful adaptation of Space Invaders. I think you'd agree. So we'll leave it there, and I hope you'll join me next time for the 80th game in this top 85 games for the BBC Micro Countdown. Until then, goodbye.